Why is it that so many younger men do not want to get married? They do not want to have children. In fact, many of them do not even want a lasting relationship with women anymore. They turn to more hedonistic pursuits such as their hobbies or one-night stands. Well, hopefully I can provide some insight into this growing problem that we find. And a while ago, I did make a video on the men going their own way or MGTOW movement, and I still hold that opinion, but I would like to clarify a couple of things because the topic was brought up to me again. So first off, to reiterate what I said in the video, mostly I was irritated that the live stream was boring. That's why the video is fairly hostile, but my point still stands. The MGTOW movement as a whole is toxic. These types of men consistently talk about problems in society that they and only they alone could solve if they had the merit and the wherewithal to recognize the problem and solve it. For example, the problem of women. Too many low-quality women out there screwing men over by divorcing them in these terrible court systems. Yes, it is an injustice when this happens. It is an egregious violation of the contract that exists between men and women in our traditional gender roles. But the problem is that women never would have gotten that way had it not been for the enablers, the white knights, the weak men who allowed them to act like this. Terrible fathers, non-existent fathers, so on and so forth. Why is the court system rigged against men? How did women get the vote back in the day? It was because of weak men that succumbed to the wishes of women that allowed this to happen. It was not women themselves that thrust their own power upon men. No, it's the opposite. It is other men who thrust their power onto other men in the name of women. So in order to solve this crisis, it is only men who can solve it. Because if you think about it, in the natural state of our environment, men are physically stronger and have a higher tendency to be higher intelligence than women. If we wanted to, if all of the men in the world banded together, we could completely dominate every single woman on the planet. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that, but it is a possibility. What can they do? They physically cannot stop us from doing that. And that is my point. If you think that there is a problem in this world, you cannot just sit by and complain. You must go out and do something about it to make a positive change. And yes, you may feel powerless. Certainly there are times in which I feel powerless. If there's a terrorist attack across the ocean, what can I possibly do but talk about it and spread the truth about what's going on? That's about it. It's a little bit different, however, when it comes to the realm of the family and gender roles, the court system, things like this. It's going to take a lot of effort, yes, but there is a change that you can make that will fix or remedy the problems that you see. Now, of course, the hardest part for a lot of white knights and weak men is coming to the conclusion that there is a problem in the first place. So if you've already come to that conclusion and you realize these social ills are pervading our society, you have taken one giant leap forward that will help you. So let's analyze the situation a little bit. You see a problem with terrible women and men enabling terrible women. Your first logical course of action would be to stop this enabling behavior, tell your friends to stop enabling these women, to go out there and talk about it, and of course to enable good quality women instead, to give resources to these women. If you know the signs or red flags of a low quality woman, do not give her any time of day. Completely ignore her and drop her out of your life. But the problem I see with a lot of these MGTOW types is that they check out of society and immediately go and enable these terrible women to continue doing what they're doing because it's a cheap thrill. One thing I see a lot in the red pill community, as it's colloquially known, is that treating women terribly and using them as sex objects and things like this is exactly what they want. But unfortunately, this type of behavior, any engagement with this woman that is even slightly validating, such as you talking to them or buying them a drink or bringing them back to your home, enables them to continue to act shitty going forward. It is only when shitty women are ousted from society, not necessarily physically, but through shame and through social norms, you can get these women to self-correct their behavior. But you are enabling them by chasing after them, buying them things, or even talking to them. If you know a woman is low quality, do not even give her the time of day, and women will come around and change their behavior. We're already seeing this in the early stages now with this whole trad woman thing that's coming around online. It's a little weird right now, but this is the natural effect of when men start to take their lives back into their own hands. Let's keep evaluating the situation here, though. So there's two types of people who are making the situation worse: weak men and terrible women. Well, if you are MGTOW and you check yourself out of society and you don't find a good quality woman to marry and have children with, you are only making the situation worse. If you know what the problems are in society, why is it that you shouldn't have children that are raised properly? Why not raise strong sons and good quality daughters in order to solve the problem? The biggest issue that many leftists find themselves in is that they cannot out-procreate conservatives because they're into this weird, very open sexuality. It causes lower birth rates. There's a whole discussion to be had there, but by checking out of society, you allow terrible parents to raise terrible children that just perpetuates the cycle that you seem so against. The logical conclusion, the next action you should take should then be to find a good quality woman and have high quality children, and then spread these values and have as many children as you can responsibly have. But you can't do that if you're going your own way, so to speak. If you waste all of your time and efforts on hobbies or interests or crap you don't need. If you are a materialist, these problems will never get solved. This is the same problem that many third world militaries run into, is that as soon as there's a single sign that the battle could possibly not go in their favor, the men drop their weapons and abandon ship. And because there's so many of them that think this way, the entire military collapses at the first sign of even just a little hole in the boat, so to speak. This is essentially what the MGTOW movement perpetuates. As soon as one little bad thing happens, everybody jumps ship and decides to go their own way, thus perpetuating the terrible cycle that we find ourselves in. That, I think, is the correct course of action for people, in particular men, to take. If you see this problem, there is only one logical way that you can resolve it. I say there's only one way, but you know what I mean. Find a good quality wife, have lots of high quality children. That's about it. Now, the second part of this video, why are men turning towards things like the MGTOW movement? And this comes purely from my estimation, and that's a lot of men grew up with weak fathers, but are not necessarily weak themselves, or at least they're not so far gone that they can't be changed. But they see it as a hopeless situation in which there is no moving forward with this. There is no possible way to solve it. Why shouldn't I just remove myself from the situation, enjoy what I have while it lasts, and just live out the rest of my days like that? This, of course, is the mindset of a weak man. Men who do not favor action. Men who would prefer to sit around all day and watch other better men do things instead. And yes, some men are born to serve and others are born to rule. That's perfectly fine. But there is a difference between servitude, and I use this word lightly here. There is a difference between servitude and just doing nothing with your life. You may work a 9-to-5 office job. You may have a nice car or a nice apartment, or even have nice consumer electronics, or you might have a hobby that you enjoy. But what do you really have? Not a whole lot. The biggest problem I have as an outsider, and because of my personality, I look at the MGTOW movement and I think, what would be the end result of my life if I followed that path? It would amount to nothing. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, why men are turning to this. Well, a lot of men see this as a hopeless situation. They are born into a family with weak fathers who don't tell them how the world works or how to be a man. And because of this, they see things as hopeless. So they turn to hedonism and this individualistic mindset that has pervaded at least the Western world for over 100 years now. And they see this as an out. They see it as a justification for their failures, so to speak. Oh, well, I'm not going to get married, I'm not going to have kids, but that's only because women are terrible. It's not because of any of my personal failings. It's not because I didn't go out there and improve myself and attract a high-quality woman. Now, that's all a woman's fault. It is a lot of blaming. And believe me, I get it. There are a lot of shitty problems with women and with the justice system and so on and so forth. But as I said in the beginning, you have a responsibility to make these changes. You are man. Nature has seen fit to provide you with denser bones and a certain skeletal structure and bigger muscles and certain hormones in your body and certain chromosomes that allow you to be a leader, to do things that the other sex cannot possibly do. Only you can make these changes. And because of how feminized our society has become, men are not taught this anymore. Men are taught that, men and women are the same, and all of these differences are just social constructs and things like that. They've been force-fed this lie that masculinity is just drinking whiskey and going out to bars and watching football. They don't actually talk about what I call classical masculinity, which is to be the provider or the head of household, to be an explorer, to have passion for something, to work with your hands, to be tool or object focused, to enjoy camaraderie, and to be prepared for war, and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll do another video on that topic, but men aren't taught that anymore. Those values are not instilled in them anymore, or at least if the father or someone in the family does tell the young men about that, it's some bastardized version, like I said. Only real men watch football and drink beer and, drive big trucks. That's not masculinity. And of course, this is the straw man that the more feminized of our society like to attack constantly. Just like in politics, a lot of men don't realize there is an alternative. There has been this false dichotomy that has been set up. Either you're this caricature of masculinity or you're a twink, basically. That's essentially what they're saying. You're either one or the other. There is no third position. But I will tell you this, just like in politics, there is a third option. There is a third position, a different path that you can take as a man that will fix the problems of our society nowadays. And also, just like in politics, you must at least try. Regardless of the results, if you do not try, you lose by default. And I personally will not stand for that. In conclusion, I would say to those who are on the fence about being MGTOW or being a traditionalist, I would say, man up. And I mean that seriously. It's time to grab this life by its throat and bend it to your will, as nature intended you to do so. And if you want to check out of society and just sit around and play video games all day, that's fine by me, but you can no longer whine about the problems in the world. Sit down, shut up, and let your betters fix the problem.